My Govanen, welcome back to Medieval Art. I'm Dr. Bryan Keene. I'm here with Dave Lewis of Cinema Millennials of TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. We're going to be discussing the 7th episode, Doomed to Die, of Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. Dave, the Siege of Eregion has finally begun, and it's hard to believe we have one episode left with a lot of loose ends. Where do we go with this episode?
Well, the thing that everybody's talking about is this infamous kiss between Elrond and Galadriel. Yes. Is it a distraction? Yes, it is. It is a distraction. But for all of us, or for those of us who don't understand why people are up in arms about this very now infamous kiss, is because Galadriel is Elrond's future mother-in-law. So Galadriel, again, as I will say this, I want to repeat this, is Elrond's future mother-in-law. So throughout this show, it's been kind of interesting to see what their relationship is like for people like myself and Brian, to see where it's going to go, if we're going to see this reveal of Celeborn, and then even people were hinting at, or were hoping for, the reveal of Merdania as Celebrian in disguise, in a way. Now, that rumor has been uh, crushed in so many ways and decapitated in so many ways. So it's going to be interesting to see where they're going with this kiss. Yes, it's a distraction, but I think this is also a distraction from what the show could be and what the show should be. Because most people are talking about the kiss in this way rather than everything else that was happening in this episode. Most especially what was happening with Anatar and Celebrimbor, the true heart and soul of this show and of the Second Age as a whole. I know I keep saying this and we keep talking about it, but that's because we want to drive that point home that it is that important. And if both of these actors, Charlie Vickers and Charles Edwards, do not get Emmy nominations next year, it will be a mistake on that Academy's part. Yes, I have a very thin connection to Charles Edwards, and I know I'm being biased in a way, but even if I didn't know that or I didn't have that connection, I would still be excited and hopeful for that nomination, for their performances to be recognized. And those are the main things that, I'm kind of still ruminating about and ruminating about in a lot of ways. And I think, again, where are we going with the rings? What is happening within the rings? Brian, where do you want to start off with?
Yeah, it's interesting. If we go back just for a second to think about that relationship between Elrond and Galadriel, I think there were some beautifully touching moments between the two of them in season one. And we really did get a sense of their deep friendship, their deep love for each other, even in a friendship context. But we now sort of see Galadriel yet again written as the object of some male presenting character's desire. In season one, it was the Halbrand Sauron potential romance. Here, the Elrond Galadriel, even as a distraction from the orcs and from Adar and the events happening in that encampment, it does confuse the matter. And I think for folks that know the lore, it's confusing. For those who don't know the lore, it's confusing. And I think you're right. In our pre-conversation, we were talking about those that want to ship everyone. This is, a move that seems to be just to kind of cause conversation and discussion. I'm sure there is a logical thought behind why it was done, but whether it justifies it for the story or not is, for another conversation. But, I can breathe my way through it as we've done. I think the point with Celebrimbor and Anatar, that is the heart and soul, as you've said. It's absolutely true. We've seen the most brilliant acting, the most brilliant storyline come to light, even with the changes from the lore. I'm okay with that storyline because the relationship is so strong, and I believe it, and I'm seeing the real spiraling, almost insanity and seduction of Celebrimbor. But then when he comes to light, literally revealing this deception and realizing that a member of the Valar or Maiar wouldn't treat me in this way, right? I mean, it's a beautiful moment of realization. That is a saving grace. I don't have much to say about battles in general. I get a little bit frustrated when battle sequences are drawn out over a series of episodes or drawn out over a sequence of, the two towers. But I think that there's a lot of beautiful visuals. Some of the story points that we saw hinted at in the trailers for this season came to light in beautiful ways. I'm not so excited about the troll fight. I was excited to see Arondir, the many happy meetings of Galadriel and Arondir, the happy meetings of Elrond and Durin. And then the further deception of Sauron maybe influencing Narvi and or Durin, maybe both Durin. So how did you feel about the dwarven storyline this episode?
I think, I think it was interesting because it did feel a little rushed to get up to that point, to get up to the point about, the that they're kind of there's this, overthrow or coup in a way that's happening. Because it did seem in a way that, everybody was behind, the Khazad-dûm fighting with the elves. I thought it was kind of interesting where he doesn't, Durin does not show up because of what's going on within Khazad-dûm as a whole and with his relationship with his father. I thought that was at first, I said to myself, maybe this is where they're trying to get the connection between, they're trying to do an in-story connection of, why the elves do not like the dwarves in this situation, that they abandon them in their most hour of need. The thing that, although I think this is interesting to say as well, like when I talk about historical films, when the writers and the showrunners look back knowing that history and then writing our personal perspectives on what happened in that history, I think that is kind of happening here in a way, in that they're trying to show and they're trying to use things that we know from either the Jackson trilogy or the lore itself, to put onto their own show. So they know what the result is and they're trying to find their way to that result. So I think with what's happening in Khazad-dûm, it's going to be interesting to see how that relationship, and again, the relationships of these shows, and most especially with Elrond, and how that relationship will either dim Elrond as a person, uh, to make him, not vengeful, but not happy to see Durin, not happy to be associated with the dwarves in the future. And I just think it'll be a big strain on to see how, even where Durin's going to go, and then the next episode, what's going to happen with the Balrog, what's going to happen to Khazad-dûm as a whole.
Yeah, it's interesting because we do get that moment with Elrond in the Third Age talking about the dwarves and the dwarves, not caring anything of the world beyond and only digging deeply and so forth. I mean, I think you're right. There is almost too much to wrap up in a single episode left. It's hard to believe that we're at the finale because we had that drop of 3 episodes early on. And I just think, how do you wrap up the further fall of Eregion, Celebrimbor's fate, Durin's Bane, Isildur's return to Numenor, the Istari and the Harfoot Stores storyline, and the forging of the One Ring? Where is Sauron going to go to Mordor that we've seen hinted at? There is a lot to sort of wrap up. So, what are you hopeful that we see in this last episode?
I'm hopeful that the storyline of Anatar and Celebrimbor comes to fruition as it should. As you have said before, that there is that kind of contentiousness that we fans have, because it's like we're seeing these things, these liberties that are taking with certain ways about going with the ring order and so on and so forth, and relationships. Now we're seeing that kind of relationship, with everything with Elrond and Galadriel. I'm excited to see that. I'm excited to see what happens with Arondir and his kind of story arc. We're a little bit of on a cliffhanger with that as well, as long as we get to the point of the One Ring is being forged by Sauron alone. The rings are where they should be in the Third Age, in a way. I know we have 3 more seasons to go. Uh, I just hope and pray that we get even more stuff with Numenor as well, to have a focus on the faithful and the struggles that they will be going through in the years ahead.
It's true. I mean, it's the complication of Middle Earth because it is such a vast world, and we've been introduced to more and more lands over the course of the Rings of Power, which we're ever grateful for. So until next time, there's a lot to consider still. I do hope that we get back to Numenor and leave off on a cliffhanger, perhaps, with the fate of the faithful. So, Dave, thank you so much again. Let's continue this discussion in a little more detail in a few moments. But until next time, Namarie.
Namarie.